This is the 85mm 1.4 G Master, and you're looking at it at 1.4 in full frame. Today we're comparing it against the Zeiss 55mm 1.8. Of course 55 and 85 are not the same, so we'll be doing a useful trick on the A7R II, which is to put it in crop mode. This allows the use of APS-C lenses, but also allows you to get a little bit of extra reach because of the crop. So the 55 will act around and about an 82.5. That brings us on to the Bokeh. Now, we're at 1.4, but I'll show you 1.8 as well. Theory says that the 55 in crop will behave similar to a 2.7. Whether that's true or not will be seen in this test, and you can make your own mind up of whether you think it's more 1.8 or more 2.7. Of course it will be 2.8 because I can't get to 2.7. So here we are, 1.4. Going to take you now to 1.7. Okay, and I'll just adjust the shutter to compensate. Okay, so that's at 1.718. That's what you're viewing it at now. So let's see if the 55 is comparable to this when we bring that in. I'll also do a photo, and you can see the full photos on SPDTDL.com/tutorials, so you can see exactly the difference. Now let's go 2.8. Okay, adjust it here. Okay, and here we are at 2.8. So let's bring on the 55, put it into crop mode, and see the differences. And here we are with the Zeiss 55mm. In theory, should be roughly the same, but 82.5 as opposed to the 85 of the G Master. And according to Toby Southdown, at least, you should be looking the equivalent of around 2.7 at what we're at now, which is a 1.8. So you be the judge, and if you're having trouble seeing any difference, download the full size samples, spdtdl.com/tutorials, and you can download it there. That way you can really give it a good pixel peeping. What I'll do now, I'll go to 2.8. Let's have a look at some of the differences. And just adjust. There we go. So that's you on the 55. Crop mode at 2.8. What are we thinking about the Bokeh? Here we are now in Lightroom. First three shots are all taken with the 85 G Master, 1.4, 1.8 and 2.8. And then these two shots, this is the Zeiss 55 and this is at 1.8, and then this is the Zeiss 55 at 2.8. Let's compare the G Master 1.4 with the 55 at 1.8. It's hardly a fair comparison, but in the interest of science, yep, okay. And as we predicted, the 1.4 Bokeh absolutely destroys it. This is now then going to be the 85 G Master at 1.8 versus the Zeiss 55 at 1.8. Now the 55 is in crop mode, so it's, like I said, 82.5. Let's have a look. Ah, okay. So in crop mode, the Bokeh is not behaving the same. Looks like Toby Southdown was correct in his calculations. You do have to multiply the crop in equivalent of focal length and also in the 1.8 as well. So in this case, 55 times the 1.5 crop, 82.5. And then 1.8 times the crop, 1.5, 2.7. So with this being at 1.8 on the right, the 55mm, it's more of a 2.7, 2.8, whereas the G Master being full frame is still behaving as a 1.8. So let's compare apples to apples. We're going to need 2.8 on the full frame and 1.8 on the 55. Is that going to give us a similar result, and absolutely yes, it is indeed. Really similar result there, actually. Very interesting. And let's now go 2.8 on the 55 versus 2.8 on the 85. Let's have a look. Yeah, okay, so in this, at 2.8, the 55 is almost sort of F4 territory, and of course the G Master wins it. So let's just go back then. 2.8 on the G Master in full frame versus 1.8 on 55 in crop mode gives us the same. Scientific proof. You heard it here. Second, maybe third, probably fourth. You probably know it already, but just to back it up, do need to multiply your focal length and your aperture by 1.5, assuming you're on Sony, to get the right results. So if you're using the Zeiss 55 1.8 on your 6500, it's acting as a 2.7 stroke, of course, 2.8. It's been mathematically emotional.